Welcome to the world of MCA Discovision.
To begin playback of a disc, turn the player power on, place the disc on the spindle. Use the play button to start.
Discovision, that you be the boss. Now I'd like to show you some of the valuable things your MCA Discovision system lets you do.
Most persons find it more convenient. Gently pull up as you press down on the center shaft with your thumb. You'll hear a click. Simply plug one jack into this outlet.
How about that? Pretty easy, isn't it? Discovision.
This red light comes on.
Simply press stop. After I've stopped the action, you're going to practice using these buttons. The Discovision player gives you many special capabilities.
All right, sorry about the delay today. I was doing tickets and I had a call I had to wrap up and it went a little long. I don't know if you guys know, but I like to talk. So there's that. All right, it's officially Wednesday. That's at least what my calendar tells me. And we are back with another stream. Yes, I did get Clara. Clara, are you a good girl? Yeah, she's right here. Right here. There's a doggo. So, also have been working on some adapter parts for those of you guys with the Mega Zero, the version 1, with some adapters here. And these are just one or two layer, these are 2-layer test prints. For an adapter to put a heated bed on. So I have, this is actually Anycubic's 220 by 220 bed that they sell. It was like 27 bucks on Amazon. And I'm going to be going over on the stream how to put it together. So I'm actually printing 2 of the adapter brackets I made in PLA just to do a final test fit. And then the final ones will be in, the final ones will be done in ABS too. So I'll post that STL out there for those of you guys that can print ABS. PLA you might be able to get away with, but I wouldn't recommend it just because it's by a heated bed. And the bed's going to be sitting on that bracket. So if it warps, it'll deform. So anyways, let's see here. What do we have in chat? Tyler West. Oh, Matt's asking if his if Tyler West's Aster board came in. I don't know if his did, but mine did. I don't have any firmware or anything for it, so we'll see. This is an interesting board, because they're trying to... It's basically a board that's going to, like, leverage cloud printing, but it's a Chinese company, so I don't know how much I trust that. I I trust it about as much as Creality's Cloud, but I wanted to check it out, and see what's going on with it. So, let's see here. Who else is in the chat? Yeah, Matt, I haven't gotten any firmware or anything from them yet. They just sent me the board, so it's sitting here, and I told them I'd test it out for them. So, anyways, let's see here. Anybody have questions? All right, let's see. We got some questions. So the way this works is you guys post questions in the chat and I answer them. Otherwise, we go off on tangents on other things, and my brackets just finished printing on my CR10. So, I also used the restroom before I started, and I have my energy drink here, and I've already started on that today. But we'll see. We'll see. Also, if everybody can keep Aaron's grandma in their thoughts and prayers. She's in the hospital right now on a ventilator. So I just wanted to shout that out. Hopefully she makes a recovery, but we'll see. They're not sure if it's COVID or not, but she has some respiratory issues going on, and she's quite old. So, Aaron, if you're watching, hang in there, bud. And I also got some whiskey for you later. So, anyways, on to the topic at hand, which is you guys asking me questions. Let's see here. We have a couple. Rod Pyle has an interesting question. Can I trash my CRX first version and gut it to make a CR10 Pro? Is there a how-to? No, I wouldn't make it a CR10 Pro. What I would probably do is do what we did with ours. I sold ours because we didn't use it and I didn't have a need for that machine. But we just did the LCD conversion kit on it, which gives you a lot more features on the board, which we do have in our shop. And that you can run regular Marlin on it and have a lot more control over it. You could even then convert it to a single extruder if you wanted to. The easiest way to do that would be to get like the Creality X carriage, which I actually just ordered 3 of them from tinymachines3d.com. Chris Bennett is the guy who owns that company, and they're a small business just like us. And they make fully assembled printers that are, you know, all quality checked and everything. So if you guys are looking for Creality, or I think he also sells FormBots and the Trudon ones, they have quite a few, but they're really good if you want a printer with no hassle, you know, versus buying it from China. They're based in Texas here in the US, so they do really good work. So if you guys do want a printer and not have to deal with all the Chinese stuff and a Chinese seller, but you still want an affordable printer, I would highly recommend Tiny Machines 3D. It's where I got my first CR10 from. I've bought quite a few machines from Chris. But anyways, I mean, in answer to your question, Rod, I would probably just do the LCD screen swap on it, and then just use it like that. And then if you want another printer that size, then just go ahead and buy another one. Or if you don't want the dual extrusion because you're having issues with their hot end, I know their hot end can be a little wonky, is I would probably just strip the second extruder off of it, get a Creality carriage, like a regular Creality carriage, regular Creality hot end, or a V6 style, whatever, and just swap and then use it as a single extruder printer. That's what I would do. I wouldn't try to make it a CR10S Pro. You can't put the guts of the CR10S Pro into there, but you can definitely make it a CR10 essentially. You know, just basically a custom little machine. Let's see here. Joseph Wonder says, saw your video on the Hero Mini Gen 5. I understand it's difficult to sell parts for it, but as a fan duct, what's your opinion? I thought I mentioned that. I do think it is a good fan duct. It's just, like I said, the correct word would be fiddly with trying to get it together. But once it's all together, it performs really well. So if you, and we do the prints, we get quite a few. We get probably about 6 or 7 people a week that come to us and have us print the parts for them in ABS. Some people say they can do them in PLA. Some people say that they've had them warp on them. I've had the ducts start going like this, even with a silicone sock from the heat of the heater block. So, you know, at the very least, you want that actual ducting in PETG or ABS would be the best material to do it, because they just kind of bloop. But yeah, in terms of cooling, it's good. Coffeeology says I know it's at your own risk, but I want to tell you, got the silent board 115 to accept Unified 213. It works a treat. Yeah, it's officially supported in there. So we got those 8-bit boards supported. The 115 is an 8-bit board. Nicholas Ginsman, I know you're a regular here. What cooling duct do you recommend for the E3D V6? Well, it also depends on your printer. But if we're talking about Creality printers, which we usually are, let's just be honest, those are usually the machines we're talking about here. I do have multitude of different printer brands, but I like Creality. I would go with either the Petsfang setup or a HeroMe Gen 3 or Gen 5. Sorry, I don't know why I said Gen 3. The HeroMe system supports that on Creality printers, and so does the Petsfang. And the Petsfang is larger, but it's also easier to assemble. I think they're both really good coolers. I use both of them here. I've got some HeroMes, I've got some Petsfangs, I've got some other stuff. If you want a simple one, there's the V6 heavy duty mount, which has been out for a couple of years, and it's just a simple no frills block that goes on the carriage, a retaining clamp for the fan, and then you can bolt a sensor on the left or right, a fan on the left or right, 2 fans and a sensor. We actually sell the heavy duty mount in our shop pre-printed in ABS. So we also have that on our CR10 Mini, which is actually behind me. It's down for maintenance because there was some electrical issue with the bed that I have to sort out. So, but anyways, moving on. Oh, I totally forgot. Richard L. Home automation questions. I'm totally cool if you guys ask home automation questions. I spent last night drinking whiskey and fighting with my Z-Wave network. So I will just say, if I had to redo my home automation system here, which we also, I say home automation, but we also use home automation in our shop for our security system, our door access codes for our door and stuff. So it's not just for the home, you can use it for a business. Granted, if you know what you're doing. But in terms of my go-to site, I think it's called the Smartest House. thesmartesthouse.com. That's where I get anything Z-Wave from. And the thing with Z-Wave is, and with Home Assistant, is right now, if you use Home Assistant with Z-Wave, usually you have to use a USB dongle, which is what I have. I have the AOTech Gen 5s. And just so you know, some of the AOTech Gen 5s don't work on a Raspberry Pi 4 unless you have a hub in between it and the Gen 5, something with the USB controller. But what I mean by weirdness is Z-Wave is a mesh network, and it takes a little while for it to initially start up. So one of the reasons I would say I do less Z-Wave for like lights and switches, that kind of stuff, is because when you restart Home Assistant, if you're using their setup, their normal setup, that network takes a while to start up. All the devices have to talk to each other. It has to initialize all them. So what I actually did was I set up a Pi 4 with my stick, and I run an add-on. So there's Home Assistant on that Pi, but the Home Assistant isn't really doing anything. It's just there as like a management tool. And I run there's a plugin or an add-on called Z-Wave to MQTT. MQTT is like a IoT type protocol that stores, sends, receives, monitors states of devices. And Z-Wave to MQTT allows me to keep the Z-Wave network running on the separate Pi. But then instead of putting in the IP address of the Pi itself, I put in the IP address of my main Home Assistant server that's running the MQTT service. So what that allows me to do is I can restart my main Home Assistant box and the Z-Wave network keeps running. I just got that all finished setting up last night. I had to include some of my sensors, but I've got all 62 devices showing up now. And it seems to be working well. So I also have their Home Assistant Blue Box that they just announced. I got 3 of them on the way. I don't know if I'm going to use one in the house, but my idea was 1 for the house, 1 for the shop, and a spare. But I think what I'm going to do is keep my setup I have now with the Pi and the virtual machine for the house, since I'm doing a lot of heavy automation on it. I'm told that their box will handle it, but I'm going to put their box out in the shop, and that will plug the Z-Wave stick right into the shop one, and move it over to that. And migrating from different installation platforms, like a virtual machine, or from a Pi to a VM, or from Pi to their box, or in my case, a VM to their box, you literally they have a snapshot feature. You export that snapshot, and then you import it into the new device, and everything comes in. It's really nice. So it's really easy to back up. So anyways, yeah, Z-Wave, smartest house, all my door and window sensors, well, they're actually only on the windows. I have actual hard sensors on the doors. But actually, we do have them out in the shop on their doors. I use Monoprice's Z-Wave Plus. If you're buying Z-Wave stuff, make sure you're buying Z-Wave Plus, not the original stuff. And the one thing Z-Wave does excel at that you can't really get right now with Wi-Fi devices is battery-powered sensors. I have door and window sensors here that have been installed for 2 years now, and I have not changed the batteries on them. They're still at over half capacity. So, same thing in the shop. So Z-Wave is very good for stuff that needs to be battery-powered, but it is a mesh network. The battery devices don't mesh with the network, so you do have to have stuff that's plugged in all the time. So what I would do if I had to redo this is have all my sensors still on Z-Wave, and then just get they make little plugins that are about this big that stick on the wall, and they're Z-Wave range extenders. So they're a node that's always on to build out that mesh. So that's what I would do differently, but always on devices that are hardwired, like light switches, like this is a Z-Wave light switch in here. I've got Z-Wave throughout the house for light switches. Those also act as repeaters and extenders. So Z-Wave is not bad, but it can get slow at times. I'm hoping having my Z-Wave network running on a separate device that's on all the time, that's not getting restarted, or running on that service. Because if I had their Home Assistant box and plug the device right into that, I can restart Home Assistant if I was still using Z-Wave to MQTT as well, because that's a separate container, and I can restart Home Assistant without restarting the Z-Wave network. Well, when you have 60-something nodes like I have, it takes a while for it to come back up. We're talking 10 minutes before it's actually able to respond, and quickly, because the network bogs down when it's doing its discovery and power-up process. So, anyways, there's our home automation tangent. There might be another one. Let's see. Mario Diaz, in your opinion, what's the best way to get a Sierra 10S bed to heat faster? Insulate it. Put some insulation on the bottom of it. I use... Someone just got here. Why did the horn beep? Anyways, oh, okay. Never mind. I was like, who is that? So, anyways, you can insulate the bottom of it. There's actually a really old video on this channel that's the TDHIT professional branding. That's what I'm still running on my Sierra 10S. You could also run thicker wire to it. I ran 12 gauge wire to mine and added an external MOSFET, and that also helped it, because the stock wires are usually like 14 or 16 gauge. It depends on when they were made. So that's one other thing you can do. I do want to note that if you're ever soldering a bed, you're going to want an iron that has about 100 watts of heat output. Like my Hako here with the chisel tip can do it. I also have a 100-watt Weller that we have in the shop just for soldering beds. Big old chisel tip one, stuff you use for usually like pipe or stained glass, that kind of stuff. But other than that, the other alternative would be that was all sticking with the DC bed, would be to go to an AC bed. Now, the concern with AC beds is that obviously there's literally line voltage coming out of that into the bed now. So if you get a wire that's frayed, or if your bed is defective, you could have AC power going into your bed, and you could get electrocuted and die. So one of the things we do if we build out machines, which we've built out quite a few CR10 S5 machines, the big suckers, with the 500 by 500 beds, is we'll do a Kinovo heater. We'll put a 15 amp circuit breaker on the line before the solid state relay. And then so basically we have the wall power, hits a breaker on the line side, goes to an SSR, and then out to the bed. So with the SSR, then we can control the bed as if it was a DC bed. We carry SSRs in our shop, and there's also wiring diagrams as well for how to actually use them with your printer. But what that'll let you do is actually control it like a DC bed, and the printer's none the wiser. Now, what we also do in addition to the circuit breaker and the solid state relay control is we will run a dedicated 14 gauge ground wire from the ground plug, like the wire coming off the plug that's now feeding the bed. We usually will put a separate power plug. So a printer that we build out with an AC bed will have two plugs, one for the control box, one for the bed. We'll ground the ground to the frame of the printer, and then we usually do like a little eye loop, put it through a screw, bolt it in, and then we'll do another wire with 2 eye loops, one at either end, bolt it onto that same bolt, and then run it over to the bed itself, and then ground the bed plate itself. So if there is an issue, your printer frame is grounded and your printer bed is grounded. So, and the reason you want to have ground is if you have a short, it's going to go to ground through the wire because it's the path of least resistance instead of going through you, which could kill you. Also, having the circuit breaker in there allows it to pop in the case of a short. We usually use 15 amps. Most of these beds pull 11, like the big ones, the big 508s by 508s. The CR10 size will be less, typically. But 15 amp is enough to protect your most of your household circuits. So hopefully that breaker trips before your circuit breaker does, in the event of a short. So just extra protections are good. I've also seen other guys use thermal fuses where you mount it directly to the bottom between the actual heating pad and the bed, kind of sandwich in between there, and then they make ones that will blow at certain temperatures. So the idea is if the SSR gets stuck on, it'll disconnect it. But those are usually one-time things. They're not usually resettable. They probably make resettable ones. But the idea is that it breaks that connection. So in case of an issue where the solid state relay is stuck on, or your printer is telling the solid state relay to kick on when it's not supposed to, you have a physical device that will break that circuit. And if you have the ones I've seen are one and done, so you just replace that after you fix whatever the issue is that caused it in the first place. So I'm not a huge fan of AC beds because of the additional safety risks that come along with using them. I really like DC beds because it keeps, like, DC power can give you a little zap, but it's nowhere near the level of dangerousness that at the voltages we're working at, which is 12 to 24, it's nowhere near the level of danger that wall power is, especially if you're in like a European country or outside of the US and Canada. They usually use 200 plus volts, and that'll get you good. Let's see here. Joseph asks, I live in Canada and tend to live in a colder house. Yeah, you are in Canada. Although we're in Indiana, it gets pretty cold here too. So, I know ABS is sensitive, but how does the ambient temperature affect PLA and PET-G? In my experience, it really depends on the brand of filament you're using. I find that, and this is just a generalization, this isn't an end-all be-all thing. I found that in general, a lot of the Chinese PLAs, which I assume it's because they use different additives than people making them in the US, I noticed that those usually are more prone to actually warping. I haven't had too many issues with PET-G warping, to be honest, but I don't print a ton of PET-G. We do mostly ABS and PLA. But it is possible. I would say try out different brands. Do like a long flat part and, test it. But if it's in the house where you're at, you're probably like, this office I keep colder. I usually keep this office at about 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll kick the heat on if I'm cold, trying to save power. I don't have issues with PLA or PET-G pulling up when I do print it in here, even when it's colder. One thing you can do is, I've mentioned this before, I feel like it comes up almost every stream, is the stuff we have in our shop called the Vision Miner nanopolymer. That stuff is really good at keeping stuff stuck down. PET-G, PLA, ABS, nylons, PEEK, it's like magic. It's like magic in a bottle for bed adhesion. And I'm not exaggerating. That's one of those products that we used here in house for over a year before we started selling it, because I went, well, we use this stuff all the time. We love it. We should sell it. So now we do. Let me see here. What else? Jesse Sparks, when using the unified firmware and manual mesh settings, do you need to do anything to make sure the printer uses the mesh? Yeah, you should add, this is assume you've generated the mesh and it's stored in your EEPROM. You should add an M420S1, M420 space S1, all capital letters, and that will turn on bed leveling. If you don't have that, what could happen is it can be disabled when you start a print. If you're using our firmware, we do have the restore leveling after G28, only for the manual mesh leveling just to try to make sure it's always on. We don't have that on for ABL probes because it can sometimes cause issues. It has in the past for probes, but as far as I know with manual mesh, it's been okay. But M420 space S1, and make sure you capitalize the M and the S, and that will put that in your G code after your G28, and that will use the mesh. Now, if you cleared your EEPROM or you generate a mesh and didn't store it, it's not going to do anything because there's no mesh data for it to use. Bill Marcy, is there a drop end, hot end like a mosquito for Prusa MK3S? I'm not sure. I don't deal with Prusa stuff too often. We ended up putting a Bondtech on our MK3S here, just to get rid of the like salmon skinning issue or whatever you want to call it. There's a GitHub issue. I'm sure if you guys have a Prusa, you're familiar with it. But I would check printedsolid.com. They sell a lot of stuff for Prusas. I would check that out. They have a lot of stuff, and they might be able to point you in the right direction too. I don't know. I'm not in the Prusa space. Coffeeology, is there any way to buy a Prusa and not order from the Czech Republic? As far as I know, no. They only ship out from theirs, as far as I know. It's just kind of like us. We only ship out from the U.S. We don't have any branches. As far as I know, there's no Prusa resellers unless you pick up a used one. Let's see here. Egbert said, wait, hang on. Nope, wait, I skipped. Sorry. Patricio Ramirez says, what type of cable do you recommend I use for motor and power source wiring? Thanks for all the information you share with us. I'm not sure what you mean by motor wiring. Motor, like stepper motors, you can usually just use your standard, like most stepper cables are like 24 to 20 gauge wire, which is usually fine for what we're dealing with. In terms of power, I would recommend going with like 14 to 12 gauge, depending on what your screw terminals can accept. It also depends on your current too. You know, if you're running an AC bed, you could get away with, 18 gauge wire going to your printer's control board because all you're running then is fans and a small hot end heater and the motors. But if you're running a bed through that same board, then you have to beef up your wiring, which in that case, I would say 14 gauge minimum at that point for most heated beds. Richard said, oh, he was about the Z-Wave stuff. He converted every bulb in his house. I need to go further. Yeah, I do like Z-Wave because it's less devices on my Wi-Fi. But like I said, just the network starting up is kind of a pain sometimes. But I think the new setup I have where I have a separate device that only does the Z-Wave network, I think it's going to alleviate a lot of my issues. Because that device is not going to get messed with. Whereas my main Home Assistant install, I might restart that couple times a week if I'm adding things on or doing things. But like I said too, if you guys do have a single box, because the problem is here, I have a weird I have a more higher end custom setup. My Home Assistant runs on a virtual machine. I can't pass through the USB device that's upstairs on a completely different level. So my server's in the basement. There's some workarounds that I've done, but they're finicky. So the best way to do is just have a device like a Pi, which is what I have, running the Z-Wave network and sending all the data over to my MQTT on the main server. So obviously my virtual machine has a lot more horsepower too than a Pi 4 because the box it's running on, that's a 3960X Threadripper with 128 gigs of RAM. So I have up to 16 gigs of RAM allocated and 12 processor cores to my Home Assistant install, and it's running on an NVMe drive, so it's very fast. But I feel like I'm kind of an edge case. Not many people have servers. I think the box that they came out with, their Home Assistant Blue box, which is an Odroid board in a nice case and everything, I think that's the way to go for most people. So, Egbert says, I switch over to Fire Sticks for TV, Echo devices in the house. These have Zigbee hubs in them. Yeah, I did hear they had some sort of hubs. I wasn't sure if it was Zigbee or Z-Wave. Just starting the home automation. Any suggestion on device and compatible security? I'm not sure what you mean by compatible security. But I do know there's some integration with the Amazon Echo devices and Home Assistant. I moved over to all the Google stuff because I like being able to cast to my stuff, and Amazon had been locking out local API access that Home Assistant was using, and this was 2 years ago when we got the house here. So I switched over all Google stuff because they haven't been locking people out. That might be different now. But I do believe there's some integration with the Echo devices and Home Assistant. In terms of using those Zigbee hubs built into those Echo devices, I don't know if Home Assistant will be able to leverage those to get those devices into Home Assistant. I would, if you're going to jump on the home automation bandwagon, I would highly recommend go with Home Assistant and get yourself a dedicated Z-Wave, or they have common devices where it's Z-Wave and Zigbee. They also have just Zigbee little USB dongles. Another thing you can do too, which I contemplated doing before I did my Pi setup, is buying what's called there's these devices called I think it's the Fibro Home Center, which is technically a Home Assistant competitor, but Home Assistant integrates with it locally, and so does there's devices called the Vera Plus, and I think the Vera Lite. But these are little home automation boxes, but you can use them as just hubs to talk to your Zigbee and Z-Wave devices through Home Assistant locally. So don't recommend SmartThings, because even if SmartThings is on the same network, like Samsung's thing, which is what I originally bought and I returned it, it all has to go over the internet. So if your internet's down, all your stuff goes down. But I don't know. I've toyed with buying a Vera Plus, I think seems to be that, or one of those Fibro home centers. Literally just to use them as a network connected Z-Wave / Zigbee hub to talk to Home Assistant. So, let me see here. Let's check the questions. Oh God, hang on, chat. Hang on, live chat, all messages. Hang on, chat just jumped. All right, here. So I got that one. Matt says it's on the board pre-flash. Yeah, I'm assuming there's something on that board, but I'll communicate with Matthew over at Aster and see what's going on here. Cold House, change the board. Oh, David Wilson. Wait, change to the current EasyBoard firmware, specifically or especially Z offset to 0 ? We didn't change the Z offset, we changed the homing, and this is on the new Unified 2. The reason we changed the homing is because we originally had it to be 5 after homing, okay? Well, the problem is with how Marlin's working now, you would have to move it down 5 and then set your offset, which was confusing people, so now we just have it home to 0 after homing. It was more of a usability thing, and by usability, I mean people not listening to directions. So I just removed that portion from the firmware, so it's one less step. Texas Rod Pile. Okay, that was the CRX. Yeah, like I said, change the carriage, put our LCD kit on there, and then just call it a day. Then basically you'll have a CR10. Manual mesh settings, got that. Oh, Jonathan Barger just bought SVO and recommended mods or issues. So the SVO one's pretty solid. We have a lot of stuff for the SVO one. I mean, my personal thing, and I'm obviously a little biased. I put the Easy ABL kit on it. So ours, Easy ABL, the solid bed mounts. I did put an Easy board in it. You don't have to change the Easy board unless you want to spend the money. The stock board is a decent board. So Easy ABL, solid bed mounts. I put the piece of PTFE between the extruder guide piece and the hot end. So I would take yours apart to see if it's in there. They said that they were doing it, but I would still verify. And that's about it. I did Easy board, Easy ABL, solid bed mounts, and then I did the flex plate. It's a decent machine out of the box. And it's dual Z. So I want to go too crazy modifying it. They did a good job on that machine. I think it's actually really underrated. Tommy O says, what do you think about Habitat? I tried it. I didn't like it. Right now, I feel like, I'm making sure this is the right one. Habitat is that little green. Yeah, I don't like Habitat. I tried that. Habitat is like home automation easier than Home Assistant, but I think if you guys are watching this channel, you guys are probably the type of person that will spend time to read up on things and understand how they work and how to do things. And the thing with the Habitat stuff is it's more closed off in terms of what it can integrate with and the flexibility you get with it. But it's meant to be a simpler platform. So there's trade-offs. You know, it's like Apple versus, you know, an Apple phone, iPhone versus an Android phone. iPhone does a lot of stuff, but you're pretty limited on how much you can mess with it. Android, pretty much fair game. It really depends on what your use cases are. I really like Home Assistant. I feel like Home Assistant is the one project that's pushing forward at a very rapid rate. I don't know if many of you guys know this, but Unify actually hired people to work on Home Assistant and Unify. So, which I have Unify access points. Let me make sure. I'm just double checking. Already got that one. Already got that one. Nick Jensen, I know you're not Apple fan. What do you think about the AirPod headphone looking things? I think they look stupid, to be honest. I think they look dumb. Like, they hang down. I like Samsung's way of doing it. It was painful for me to spend this much on headphones, but I had a discount code. I got their Galaxy Buds. I like these because they literally just go all the way into your ear. Like that, and you don't have a thing hanging down. I think it looks dumb. But I've been fairly happy with these. I think the AirPod ones just look ridiculous. And then there's people making things to put cords on them so you don't lose them, which kind of defeated the whole purpose. But anyways, I digress. I've been very happy with the with my Samsung Buds. My wife has a pair too, so she uses them all the time. I don't use mine too often, but when I do, I like them. Let's see here. Jeremy Belgrove, looking to upgrade one of my here, Ender 3 to Dual Z. Stepper motor, second stepper motor or belt driven, which one is better? I don't think either one's better. I think it comes with preference. I prefer the belt driven one, which is what our kits that we sell. I think they're out of stock right now. We do have more on the way. But I like the belt driven because there's no electrical work needed. It's all mechanical and it works well. The downside of the second stepper motor, unless you add a belt, which then just get the belt driven setup anyways, your gantry can still go out of whack and tilt. The belt driven one, like what we sell, that gantry, once you get it all set up and everything's all tightened down, that gantry will not get out of skew. It will stay where it's supposed to be. Someone deleted messages. Okay, well, apparently somebody was being bad in chat and it's not letting me see it. Anyways, moving on. Hey, shout out so Bill Marcy knows how great Vision Miter is. Yeah, it's like I said, it's not a gimmick. I thought it was a gimmick. Like 100%. I was like, $50 for this crap. And then I got it and I'm sold. So don't judge a book by its cover. And you don't need a lot on your printer at all. I'm still milking the same bottle. This I got back in like January, February. This is my bottle for my machines in here. So it does last a long time. Are there any problems using printers in a closet? I would say put a smoke detector in there. But not really. You might need to check. If I was running a closet, I'd probably put a smoke detector in the closet and put a temperature sensor in there just to keep an eye on things. But no, I don't see an issue with running it. Just make sure, because you probably want to power in a closet, run like a appliance extension cord. You guys can find, they're usually called appliance extension cords. They're usually 14 to 12 gauge wire. Your home improvement stores will usually have them. Amazon has them. But just run a good quality extension cord over to there. But no, I don't see an issue. Craig Williams, other than reduction noise, what would be the benefit for installing an easy board on my Ender 3? You can get a little bit faster print speed. You can run more features on Marlin. But the main thing is the reduction in noise. The stock boards from Creality do seem to be pretty well made. You know, like a lot of the people with the big Tree Tech boards have a lot of failures, but even though Creality's boards are not perfect, they are reliable. That's why we sell the Creality boards, is because they are reliable boards. You know, we have machines at our print farm running the Creality boards for years under heavy usage, and they've been very good. But the main thing would be, if you want to start printing faster, where the 8-bit board's going to start bogging down, then that's where the 32-bit's going to come into play. But the main thing people like is that it does have the trinamic drivers, so it's quiet. You also get the benefit of, if you need to update the firmware or change it, we do have that easy firmware website that does all that compiling for you, so you don't have to mess with VS Code. And we do have a lot more memory. Like, we're barely even using half the memory that's on that actual processor. So as new stuff comes out for Marlin, you're going to be able to run the newest stuff. And I've been keeping up pretty well. Within a month or less, usually less, of a new Marlin release, we have it tested and pushed out. So, but honestly, if you got even their 8-bit board and you don't plan on doing anything crazy with it, keep using it till it dies and then upgrade then. Let's see here. Vince Fortin, do you think you can install a 2-in-1 adapter on an IDEX on both heads? I definitely think you could, but that's going to be a lot of work. And you'd also have to have a board that would support 4 extruder motors. You know, basically anything's possible on a 3D printer. It's just, do you have the time, the knowledge, and the patience to do it? I wouldn't be able to tell you where to start. I mean, I would start by getting a board that has the stepper driver outputs that you need, you know, and you have to go step by step, and then getting the slicer figured out. That couldn't even wrap my head around that right now. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I would honestly rather go with a palette, which you can see my palette. This is the Palette 2 Pro S or 2S Pro. I don't know. It's the latest one. That's what I have for multi-material printing. I've been very happy with the palette. I've actually, my Ender 5 Plus is right behind it, and I just got it back up and running and online. I actually put our Tough Extruder on there now that we got the bracket to put it on there. Tough Extruder, 0.6 Easy Flow nozzle, our Easy Cam. I got an Easy Pi 4 on there, and the Palette 2 plugs into the Easy Pi, and I have their Canvas software loaded on the Octoprint installation on there. So I'm messing around with more multi-material stuff now that I got that hooked up. But one thing I did notice is the stock cooling with the 0.6 nozzle doesn't keep up with that flow rate. So I'm either looking at probably going to do a Hero Me Gen 5 on there. What's new with the Sunloon S8? It's right here. I actually have, do you see this pile of stuff that's next to it? There's a flex plate. Our 310 plate fits that machine. So I'm going to be doing a flex plate, an Easy ABL, the aluminum extruder, and I already have the solid bed mounts on it. And I have a benchy on that. That's just a Easy Mat on a flex plate I had laying around. I clipped it to the bed. So I have a benchy of the stock print quality. So I'm going to be doing a stream installing all these upgrades on it. So you guys can follow along and do that. The firmware for it's already on our website. We have a mount for the stock hot end if for some reason you want to use it. The stock hot end setup, the hot end itself is okay, but the cooling is atrocious. So, but we do have a mount for that to bolt onto the stock hot end. But I found another one, which is also in the firmware pack, that uses a 50-15 fan. And I also made an Easy ABL mount to put the Easy ABL on that mount I found. I think it was Red Squirrel Designs or something. There's all the info for their Thingiverse link. But I put a copy of it in our stuff with like the license and everything from them. Jay Whiting says, Tim, I just upgraded your Easy Board using the BL Touch. Really happy so far with your Easy Board. I'm glad to hear that. Just remember, all the Easy Boards come with 6 months warranty and technical support. So just so everybody knows, when our products, if you have an active warranty, you have active support. So if a product's got 3-month warranty, you get 3 months warranty and support. If you have 6 months, like on the Easy Board, 6 months warranty and support. So if you have questions, make sure you use the support. That's what they're here for. I pay guys to answer questions, so make sure you guys are using them. Richard L, can't have 2 virtual machines. Well, the problem is passing through that USB adapter that's upstairs down to there. It was just easier to grab a Pi. A Pi is inexpensive and it's working. And I do, if you guys, going back to home automation stuff, if you guys do use a Raspberry Pi to get started with Home Assistant, spend the extra like $10 and get what's referred to as a high endurance SD card, because the one thing that will kill your Home Assistant installation if it's on a Pi is the SD card wearing out. So like on that Pi that's in my living room now running the Z-Wave network, that has a 128 gig, and you don't need 128. You can do a 32 or 64, but that's what I had. 128 gig Samsung Pro Endurance card. So they're faster and they're made for more reads and writes. If you use a crappy card, or like a random one you have laying around, you're probably going to wear it out. That's the main reason people go off of the Pis and they'll move their Home Assistant installation to a virtual machine, or they'll move it off to something like the Odroids, which I have coming, because the Odroids have eMMC, which is basically a little SSD. So I just want to throw that out there. And make sure you take backups. They have a very nice snapshot feature, and you can export it, and then with that one file, you can get your installation back up and running really quick. All right, let's go back to where we are. Adam says, any progress on the plugs? Firmware is done, documentation is almost done, and we've sent out like 15 of them to people, and I'm in contact with them. So how we're doing the beta testing stuff is I have a beta testing channel that's only for people that we've sent products to out in our Discord. And every single one of them was able to get it up and running with no documentation. They are fairly simple to get up and running, but still going to write documentation for those of you guys that are not as well versed. So anyways, Michael Mearsman, I have a monoprice maker select plus ring stop firmware. I like the printer, but I don't like the nozzle bed presets. One is for PLA or ABS. I know there is software for the board and the LCD. Is there a way to change, possibly hack the LCD to change the default presets? So we have firmware in our Unified 1 for that, but we don't have support changing the presets. Our firmware for the i3 Plus is based on a project called ADV++. It's by a guy named Sebastian Androvit. I'm probably saying his name wrong. But I know they're still actively developing that. We're not going to be putting out the i3 Plus firmware into the new Unified 2 for a while because it's such a unpopular machine. It's not worth the time, and the Unified 1 works great for it anyways. But I would look into the ADV++ firmware. Sebastian Androvit is the guy who runs that, so you should be able to look that up and find him. Hang on, chat just why does YouTube make chat jump? Like I'll be scrolling, all of a sudden it goes right to the bottom. Now I have to scroll back up. Okay, we're back to where we were. Kevin Berger says Echo is Zigbee. It's good to know. I don't use any Amazon devices. I'm all in on that Google Home. Your Ender 3, Joseph Wonder. My Ender 3 gets echoing. What settings should I be looking at for that? That the proper term is called ringing, and I'm assuming that's the little you see like little lines going like this on the sidewalls. One, printing too fast. Two, your belts could be loose, your wheels could be too tight or too loose. So slow your print speed down if you're printing above 60 millimeters a second. If not, check the mechanicals on your printer. You're going to get some ringing on every single FDM machine. It just may be more or less noticeable depending on the machine you have. But usually it's a mechanical problem if you're not trying to achieve crazy fast print speeds. It's just physics. If you're going really fast, you're going to get ringing because things can only accelerate and decelerate so fast. And that's where you get like, it's going like this. And then like, just because the motor tells it to stop doesn't mean it stops right away. You'll get that on the deceleration kind of like a little, so it'll be fast and then kind of the little pulsing because it's just rubber belts. Egbert says he's going to play with Home Assistant after first year. Awesome. I'm also thinking about, because Home Assistant said that they're not going to be selling their little blue hub thing. It's like a limited run thing. Got me thinking about putting together a little starter kit for home automation. Because if you have Octoprint and you have a Wi-Fi outlet, you can tie all that into Home Assistant. And many people have smart devices, Wi-Fi plugs, Amazon Echoes, the Google Home devices, smart thermostats, that kind of stuff. And I love doing a home automation. It could be, there's been times where I've been in here screaming at my computer because certain things broke, but you get through it and it's very satisfying at the end. And my wife, even though she didn't initially think it was that good of an idea, if I'm working on Home Assistant and it's the automations and stuff are down, she realizes how much she actually uses it every single day. So, let's see here. R Mills, how do we make it home to +5? Is that not an option now? You would have to modify the code, and it would be the Z after homing variable in the configuration _ backend.h file. I might regress that change. I'm trying to figure out the best way to go about it because the Z probe offset, the Z probe offset wizard was fine. But when you set your, so let's say I go to set my offset or baby step after homing it, it shows 0. It doesn't move it down to 0. So let's say I homed and that option is set to 5. It'll be at 5. And then you go to set the Z offset with the baby stepping option from the LCD, it shows 0. So when you rotate it down, your offset's going to be ended up like -7 when it should be -2. So that's why I made that change, because I don't want people driving their stuff into the bed because they didn't move down 5 before doing that. So hopefully that makes sense. Trying to make things as user-friendly as possible and remove as much stuff I can that would be attributed to user errors or not following directions, that kind of thing. Let's see, what else do we have? Jay Whiting says, after flashing the easy board, the Z offset was at -5. Seemed odd. I had to set it to 0. Well, if you reset your EEPROM after flashing like we have in all the directions, then that wouldn't happen, because that's going to come from an EEPROM setting. And that's one of the reasons why we tell you to reset your EEPROM after flashing, is because old settings can linger and present themselves as these weird anomalies. So in this example, your Z offset showing -5 when it shouldn't have been. So if you reset your EEPROM, it'll clear out the offset. Let's see here. Bill Marcy. Oh, there's people chatting in chat. Oh, Bill Marcy says, I heard Stephen the Lightspeed says this too. He says he dilutes his vision miner with 99% alcohol, like 50% alcohol, 50% vision miner, and he says it goes twice as far. It is based, it does have an alcohol base, so I don't see why that would be a bad idea. I don't thin it out. Maybe I could. I'm about halfway through this bottle. Maybe I'll do that. Because just throw some IPA in here. Let's see here. Nick is taking off. Take it easy, man. 4 CPUs for me. My Creality 115 board just barfed the eStabber driver. Yeah, it's a common issue on those boards because they don't have enough cooling. That you need a thick PCB to keep those drivers cool. That's why we didn't sell the 115 boards, because they're known to blow their E drivers. I can't tell you how many people have told me that their E drivers just stopped working, and it's because that board doesn't have enough copper and layers to keep those drivers cool. The heatsink on the top doesn't really do much. Patricio said, have you ever seen a Raspberry Pi serially connected to a SKR? I have not. Just connected over USB. You're not going to gain anything by going direct serial. Just go USB. Don't overcomplicate things. Keep it simple. RAM Design. Oh, hey, if that's the same guy, I think that's Andrew, who sent an awesome little case for the Uno bootloader kit, which I just put on our website. He says, after cleaning NewTube and Hotend, adjust heat and speed, and so on, my Ender 5 still clicks a little during shorter print movements. Any idea what the problem could be? Nozzle? Yeah, I would say it's the nozzle. I had that happen to my Ender 3 and ended up just replacing the nozzle, and it was good. It's like a 50-50 shot if the little cleaning needles will get stuff out or not. But, yeah, I would just swap the nozzle and see, even just as a troubleshooting step. If it works, keep it in. If not, go back to the old one. But also, you could have filament that's got crap in. I've had that happen before. So try a different roll of filament after you clean the nozzle out. If it still happens, change the nozzle and still use a different roll of filament. Two people, what's happening with the Homer printer for the Tarantula? I will pull up my, I chatted with, what's his name? Chris Leonardo. The last contact was on the 9th. I sent him my mailing address. They said that they were going to send me the S-Gen board and the eDriver, and so now I'm waiting on the S-Gen board and the new eDriver, so we'll see. Kevin Berger, why not use USB boot and a USB-mounted NVMe SSD? That's kind of what I was thinking about doing for kits. A lot of people are doing that because the Pi 4 can actually boot from, and we're back on home automation, which does tie into printers. It's like one of the things why I got a printer was to print cases for home automation devices and electronics projects. So people are using the Pi 4 with USB NVMe adapters and booting off of that. Now that would be solid. If you're not going to max out the RAM or the processor on a Pi 4, that would be a solid option. Again, still make sure you're taking backups. Tixua says, what is Home Assistant? Home Assistant is a piece of software that you can run on a virtual machine, on a Raspberry Pi, on a single board computer. They support the Odroid boards too. It's a piece of software that takes all of your smart devices that they support. They have thousands of integrations, brings them all to one place. So really example, at a very basic example, like right now here in my office, I have a Z-Wave motion sensor on my ceiling, and I have a Z-Wave switch in the wall here for these lights. I have an automation that when this detects motion, it turns the lights on automatically and keeps them on for an hour. After the hour expires, it checks to see if this detector is still detecting motion. If it is, it leaves the lights on and starts a 1 hour timer again. If it's off, it shuts the lights off for me. It's a very basic one. It's a very basic automation, but very useful one. One would be for 3D printing. They make Wi-Fi and Z-Wave connected smoke detectors. Let's say you have, you know, when these are ready, let's say you have an easy plug, okay? You have Home Assistant talk to this. You have your smoke detector in Home Assistant. You can set up automation that if it detects smoke, it sends you a push notification to your phone and shuts the outlet off. Stuff like that. Like for safety stuff here in our house, we have the Nest fire or smoke and CO2 detectors right now don't natively integrate with Home Assistant, which I'm not happy about, but I also wasn't happy with the first alert ones we had in here. That's a rant for another day. But I have a Z-Wave sensor that detects the sound of the smoke and CO2, which then sends a trigger to Home Assistant. So if my smoke alarms or my CO2 alarms go off, all the lights in the house come on automatically. Every single one. It also sends me a push notification to my phone, and then it uses, it takes a snapshot to take a JPEG image of the cameras in the house and sends them to my email and my phone over push notifications. So if we're outside of the house, we're not home, we know that they're going off and we can check in on what's going on, see if it's a false alarm or if there's actually a fire. So it's very useful. So what I recommend people doing is get the devices you'd like to control installed. So your switches, your door sensors, your window sensors, you know, your Wi-Fi plugs, you know, Octoprint, because Octoprint works with Home Assistant too, which is awesome. So you can have a dashboard showing all your printers at a glance. And it's way easier to set up than OctoFarm. But anyways, get all your stuff that, like, I'd like to be able to control this. I'd like to be able to monitor this, you know, door open, close, window open, close, temperature sensor, humidity sensor, that kind of stuff. Get all your stuff connected and then have it all come into Home Assistant and then sit down and start playing with automations. So, you know, you can use Home Assistant at a basic level, just have a little web interface to just, okay, I'm going to turn that light on and off. Or you can start doing automations. So anyways, I mean, one cool automation would be, let's say you got printers and they're out in a shed and the shed has heat, okay? Let's say it's a mini split or something that's infrared controlled. You can get these little guys. These are like $20. This is an infrared to Wi-Fi adapter that Home Assistant works with. You could have it so if your printers are done printing, you could have it turn the heat off, you know, or change the temperature if it's too hot, too cold, that kind of thing. It's literally limitless, the stuff you can do. You know, just think about what this little thing can do. This is a Wi-Fi connected device that can send out infrared signals. I use them to control our mini split air conditioning units. These actually are ones going out to the shop. I have Z-Wave ones right now, but Z-Wave to MQTT, which I was talking about earlier, does not work out of the box with a USB Z, like with a Z-Wave infrared blaster. And instead of spending hours of time, I just spent $40 and got these, which work directly with Home Assistant. So I'll just replace them. So, do I have a blog or something of all this Home Assistant work? No, I haven't taken the time to blog it. There are some streams. So like, there's a stream a couple days ago I did where I was working on my cigar humidor. That's automated and run through Home Assistant. Control my temperature, monitor my humidity, get push notifications if my temp's too high or too low, if my humidity's too high or too low. It's wild. You know, like, it's one of those things where you start getting into it and then you start looking around your house like, I could do that. I could put the sensor on there. I could put the switch on here and boom, I could automate that, you know. It's a very deep rabbit hole to go down. I'm warning you guys right now. I don't want to hear people complaining that, oh man, I just blew like $500 on smart home stuff. It's your fault, Tim. Probably my fault, but yeah. Anyways, let's see here. Told you that wasn't going to be only home automation tangent. Hyro and Aaron Poland. Speaking of Z offset, really odd behavior. Trying to set my EasyABL Pro Mini. Lets me set the Z offset, but it's not actually using it after homing. It will not use it after homing. It will show your homing height plus or minus whatever the Z offset is, but it's not going to move it down. It'll do it when you start a print, though. Can I fix USPS? I'm waiting for a package to be here 2 days ago. Oh, 2 days. That's not a bad delay. I will say, since you brought it up, if you guys are getting stuff from us or anywhere else and UPS is not much more expensive, spend the extra money on UPS or FedEx right now, because USPS is, and I'm going to swear, you ready? It's an absolute shit show right now. Packages are getting to their destinations, but it could be a delay from 3 days to weeks. I have a sample of a material for a project I'm working on that was sent out 2 weeks ago that was supposed to be here a week and a half ago. Still not here. Whereas UPS and FedEx have been getting stuff to me on time or early. So in general, if you have the option to select what carrier you're using, whether you're buying from us or other stores, for the foreseeable future, I would highly recommend ponying up the extra money and going with UPS or FedEx. We offer UPS on our store. So, and do the shipping insurance too. We have the shipping insurance on our site, and that's been a huge time saver for us and our customers. So if you guys get an order from us and USPS loses it, there's an email that the route insurance protection sends you. You click that, you file a claim, and the only requirement for US is 7 days with no tracking update, and they will replace the order for you, no charge, and that order is also insured. Now, if you do get the refund option, the only thing that's not refunded is the route fee and shipping. So, but if you tell them, I want this order reshipped, they will place the order for you and pay for the entire thing and send it out. So you don't have to do anything. They will replace the order for you in our system, and it'll go out like a normal order. So, and we do have the route shipping protections on by default. I also use their app. They have an app, and this works with not just our stuff, but any tracking number. Where is it? E-commerce. I have all my stuff sorted. But check this out. So like, I have all my tracking stuff. So, and you can see Ameridroid, they actually use route as well, which I kept. So the order auto-populates. So if you buy from a vendor that has, if you have your route set up, you link your emails, it'll auto-pull your orders in for tracking and give you push notifications. I really like their app, and that's free, whether you have the insurance on it or not. But like I said, right now with all the shipping carriers, do not turn the insurance off. I can't tell you how many packages I've had to deal with fighting with insurance carriers for my own personal stuff, as well as stuff for the company. It's not, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, especially with everything going on right now. Let's see here. R Mills, do you have an STL for the casing on the Easy Out? I do not. Those are injection molded, so I do not have STLs for those. Kevin said, do I have a blog? Oh yeah, for the home assistant work. If you guys look me up on YouTube, if you search Timothy Hoagland, I have a personal channel. I haven't posted on there in a while, but I do, if there's more home automation stuff that doesn't have any 3D printing involved in it, that's where it'll be. But like with the humidor, I printed a bunch of mounts, for all the electronics, so I did put it on here. But yeah, it can be overwhelming. Try to just sit down and write yourself a list of what you'd like to automate, and then figure out what you need to do, whether it's switches, sensors, relays, temp sensors, humidity sensors, that kind of stuff. Craig Williams says, where can we find the STL for the TH3 Arduino case? It's on the Help Center. It's under Downloads and STL files. Cool bench shirt. If you guys want one of these, this is literally our shirt. There's should be merch links in the video description, but if you go to our website, th3dstudio.com, and click merch, you can get one of these. It's do you even benchy, bro? Do you get it? Bench, weight bench, benchies. So that's one of our official shirts. I usually wear most of our shirts. I bought pretty much every single design we have. If not every single one, I probably have every single one. But I mostly wear our shirts during the week. Even if I'm not streaming. I mean, this is also our hoodie too. Let's see here. Aaron wants me to post the link. I'll post the link to the it's actually on the product page now too. Downloads, STL files, TH3D Uno bootloader case. If you guys are ever looking for anything regarding product documentation, downloads, first check the product page. We are moving data from the product pages to the Help Center. So the Help Center becomes the central point. But look at the product page. The product page will either have information for installation and use, or it'll have a link to the Help Center article for that product. Or you can check the Help Center directly. And you can get to the Help Center by going to support.th3dstudio.com. Airdo, do you lose money on those, or does Route pony that up? If a shipment's insured by Route, it's all part of their thing. We pay them a premium. Our customer pays part of that premium, and then, they handle it. Scoob Man's asking, who do you use for your shipment? I have a small business. I wonder, ShipStation, Pirate Ship, etc. We have been using ShipStation for over 3 years now. I've been very happy with them. Highly recommended. The way they handle, they have programs to run on your computers to pull the scale and the printers in that make it really nice and just work pretty seamlessly. Highly recommend ShipStation. Highly. Let's see. Shroud83. Sorry if you covered this, but I have to for the Z. The Z won't settle to 2mm or 5mm on my CR10 after test. It will go to Z. It'll go to 0 if you're on the latest firmware. We did mention that. I don't know what you mean. Now goes to inverted Z probe offset. Can't set to Z manually anymore. So reset your EEPROM. Make sure you're on the latest firmware. If you're using Unified 1, then that's going to still home to 5. But Unified 2, they're all on where after you home, even if you have a sensor, it'll be at 0. So, or what the printer thinks it's 0 if you don't have an offset in. Yeah, Shipping Easy, I believe, is owned by ShipStation. But Shipping Easy is more of a cut down version of ShipStation. I would highly recommend ShipStation. They have a lot of information on there and a lot of powerful automations, a lot of integrations, that kind of stuff. Ernie got his replacement cables. Thanks in regard from Australia. Man, that got there quick. It's probably the quickest delivery to Australia ever. That's only a couple weeks. If that, not even, because I think we we started doing the recall stuff maybe a little over 2 weeks ago. If that. Oh, when I say unified, I'm saying unified. But I did say unify, UNIFI earlier because Home Assistant integrates with that. Oh, that's another thing. If you have Unify access points, you can use them to track devices throughout your house if you have enough access points. Like I have one here, one in the den, one by the front door, and one at the other end of the house. So I can get a rough idea where things are at in the house if I set up that tracking. And you can have automations triggered by that. Or like, let's say you tell it the MAC address for your phone, your spouse's phone, your kid's phone, and if all of them are out of the house, you can have it automatically arm your alarm system. So Home Assistant can be used for an alarm system too, which we do use. Why is the new home 0 versus 5? We already covered this, but I'll cover it again. It's because people were not reading the directions. Because you have to move. Let's say you're setting up your offset, and it's at 5. Well, when if you use the baby stepping option, when the printer's not printing, if you use the baby stepping / Z probe offset option, it will show 0 on that, but the head is actually 5 millimeters off the bed after homing. So your offset ends up being way too high. And people were not listening to the directions where it says move the Z down to 0 if it shows at 5, and they were setting their offset without that. So it's an ID10T fix is what it is. So if you have your offset set after you home, it should show a positive value. So let's say your offset's -2. Let's just keep with round numbers. Let's say your offset is -2 and you set that and then you home. When your Z homes, it sets it to the 0 position, but it also then takes into account the offset. Your nozzle's still at what Marlin thinks is 0 without the offset, but because your offset's in there, it'll show 2. So, just use the printer and use the printer and set up your slicer and your starting codes, and everything should work just fine. Oh, Scott's in the house. Now there is a probe offset wizard coming to Marlin 208. Well, there's already a probe offset wizard in 207 too, or are you guys making it better? Because it's nice right now, but definitely room for improvement. And we are almost, even though I started late, we're actually at almost 3:30, which means I have to get going soon. Yeah, so if you have no offset, it'll show 0. But if you have an offset, yeah, it's in there, Scott. I've been using it for a couple of weeks here. Because we're on 207.2 for our code base. So anyways, that home position, the reason you have the offset is to tell the nozzle, for those of you guys that are not aware. So a Z probe offset on the Z tells the printer how far after the sensor triggers do I need to move the nozzle down to get to the correct height on the bed. So if your offset's -2, that means after the sensor triggers, the nozzle is 2 millimeters off the bed, which means we have to move it down 2 millimeters after we, do our startup routine to actually get to the correct height to get that first layer down. So, let's say, I'm just looking for something to grab. Okay, let's say this is my probe. So, and here's my bed. Okay, so let's say I'm coming down, I'm probing. Oh, we detected the bed. Let's say that's 2 millimeters. Okay, obviously it's not, but let's say. Okay, so if I go to print and I don't have an offset set, it's just going to print in the air. Okay, but if I have an offset set, when it goes to print, and it goes to the Z, 0.2 or 0.3 or whatever your first layer height is, it will then move it down so it's actually at the correct layer height on the bed. So hopefully that makes sense. That's what your offset is how far do I need to move that nozzle down after the sensor triggers to get to the correct height on the bed? Because you want the sensor to trigger before the nozzle touches so you don't get, nozzle dings all over your bed. That's why we have an offset. So the sensor detects before the nozzle touches. But then you have to have an offset to tell it what that distance is. So anyways, You know what? I'm gonna put a new channel since we are going to be doing more stuff. And I foresee TH3D getting into some more home automation stuff in the future. I just created a channel in our Discord under the main section called Home Automation. So if you guys want to talk about home automation, I'm in our Discord server. My username there is House of Bugs. It's my gaming handle I've had for over a decade now. That was my AOL handle. If you want to talk about home automation stuff, whether you're just getting into it or you've been doing it for a while, come by. If you guys do want to catch me, I'm mostly on our Discord server. If you guys want to hang out, Discord is like my thing. I do peruse the forums to make sure that, you know, there's stuff I can answer or product questions, that kind of stuff. I pop in there, but Discord is where you can harass me directly. So, and you'll never know if I'm actually online because I always appear offline, because as soon as I go offline, people will bother me. So, but anyways, general question, is there a process for finding the XY offset for probes? Here you go. Take a calipers, you can measure in both directions, and then plug your values in. You could, what I've told people to do too, if you don't have calipers, you could put your nozzle in a certain location, put a little dot where the nozzle is. So take like a marker and just like mark the dot, put the nozzle at the dot, okay? Note the XY position on your LCD when the nozzle's at the dot. Then move the center of the probe to that same dot and note the difference on the XY position. So let's say, I'm using round numbers. Let's say let's say we put the nozzle at 100, 100. And by the time we move the sensor over to that dot, it's like 135 and 112. That means we got 35 and 12 for our X and Y offset. So you can do that. I always use calipers. So, oh, and I know Doug, I'm going to just show Doug here because Doug was asking. He wanted to get some fancier calipers. These are the ones I have. Mitutoyo makes really good stuff. And these are their absolute origin ones. I'll send you a link because there's a couple different models, but I've been very happy with them. I also don't think they're that much more accurate over the cheaper ones, but I more got it for longevity because the cheaper ones seem to go through batteries quicker and don't last this long. So buy once, cry once, as they say. So yeah, anyways, but yeah, I think that'll about do it. Yeah, locked. Oh, that's a good idea too. I didn't think of that. Lockdot says, put masking tape on the bed, drop the nozzle, mark where the nozzle is on the tape, mark where the probe are, and then measure XY. That works as well. Yeah, Clara's needy. She probably needs to go OUT. So, or she's just being needy. She's probably just being needy, because if she actually had to go OUT, she would be by the door. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I hope you guys get into some home automation. I think if you guys have any smart devices or you have Octoprint or whatnot, you might have more devices than you think that'll work with Home Assistant. So highly recommend it. If I'm not messing around with my printers, I'm usually messing around with my home automation stuff. So highly recommend it. You can do all sorts of stuff. And it's very powerful tool. But there will be nights where you're screaming at your computer because you're like, why is this broken? And then you find out it's either something you did or an update broke stuff. So in my case, it's been both. So anyways, I appreciate everybody that stopped by. I hope you guys have an awesome week. I will be doing a stream at some point this week. I don't know yet. I got to plan some other stuff out, but doing the Sunlu S8. So that will be happening this week. So be on the lookout. We'll post out to all of our social media accounts and also schedule it on the YouTube channel when we do that so you guys can follow along. That's about it for today. I appreciate you guys watching. And as always, happy printing.